As it stands right now, if the rule isn't changed or until the rule does change, how much can Clyde interact with Drake? In what capacity can he interact with him?
The only thing Clyde can do, an analyst, a QC, quality control person, or a volunteer can do is encourage him. If he's going to talk, if he's going to try to coach him, he has to coach Chip, and then Chip coaches him. But that's all he can do until that point. Now, he can sit in the room, and if they're all sitting there, he can say, Chip, here's what I see with Drake's throwing motion. And they can hear it, but he has to be talking through Chip to a player.
It's kind of a...
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just have them coach. So, Art?
Is there a limit of how many analysts you can have, how many QT you guys are going to have, how many senior advisors? And doesn't that favor the schools with more money?
There is no limit. You can only have 4 graduate assistants, and weirdly enough, they can all coach. So I don't know why these rules were put in place like they are, but there is no limit on QCs, quality control guys or analysts for special teams, offense or defense, and there is no limit on pay. So you could actually pay an analyst $1 million if you wanted to, and that's a concern too. But absolutely, the teams with the most money have the most coaches, and that's a great advantage for them.
Seems like there should be a rule for that, don't you think?
I agree. What else?
So is there going to be a spring game? Have you decided about that yet?
We haven't yet. That's one thing I'm going to talk about this afternoon in the staff meeting. I get torn. We've got so many people hurt, and you get the transfer portal guys, and you don't want to be out in a spring game where you're having to play some guys too long because the other guys aren't ready to play yet and can't rest them. But at the same time, we've got a backup quarterback that needs to have some live work. We've got 19 new guys that you'd like to see in action with some people around. So it's one we've got to decide. I think we're going to see fewer and fewer people do spring games moving forward. So you may have a scrimmage of some kind, or a thud scrimmage with your older ones, and then a real scrimmage with your younger ones. But that's something that as a staff we've all got to make a decision on.
Do you get a lot out of the spring games? Have you gotten a lot out of them in the past? Or is it just you do with a couple of guys but not with most of them?
I do think the fact that you've got young guys that are playing in front of a crowd with pressure the first time really helps them before the opening game next year. And that's all you get out of it. You actually lose a practice day. You always said you need to win the spring game, or the fans want you fired right after the spring game. So the first time I was here, I think I had the best against the rest, and it was 6-3 at halftime. I had to go in and say, come on, man, just put anybody in there, but we've got to score some points if I'm going to get to stay. And then we didn't score any points in the fall either, so it's the same way.
Have you talked about flag football like the NFL?
Yeah, we could. The thing is, I'd rather practice. And I think that's the thing you do. If you're going to have a spring game, you're going to lose a day of practice. But if it overrides that you need young guys that get to play, like we've got 2 high school linebackers that really need work, but Said Gray and Power don't need that work. So should we have a spring game so the 2 freshman linebackers can play in a game and we can see what they look like in a game before the first game of the season?
Mack, what's the next step for Drake?
Drake can really improve in a lot of areas, and he would be the first one to tell you. He really wants to work on his footwork because he's so talented. He can throw the ball off balance and without footwork and still be really good, but when he gets his footwork better, he wants to work on his throwing motion some. He wants to work on having a better presence in the pocket so he doesn't drift, because some of those, he readily admit, he and Sam, some of the sacks were on the quarterback. Because they got to get rid of the ball. They got to drop the ball off more. We can't always go for the deep ball. And now you got Chip, you got Freddie, you got Clyde. You've got a lot of help from some of the best that have ever done it in that room. So it's going to be fun to watch those quarterbacks grow. Anything else?
Is there a name on each position, each side of the field that you're really excited about heading this spring? Young guy that you think is going to explode?
I really want to watch those 2 new receivers, Tez Walker and Nate McCullough. They're experienced. We saw Nate a bunch. We didn't see Tez as much, but his film's unbelievable. So I really want to watch them. I want to watch the 2 freshman running backs. I want to see where George Pettaway and Omarion Hampton can grow and go, because they both are very talented. We got to find the next quarterback. Who's that? So Ted Hudson's here. I want to see him. Connor Brewer didn't get to play. Harold didn't get to play a lot last year, so he didn't get to practice a lot. So he needs to come back because he was really hot and good when he first got here. And then Jefferson Boaz has a new chance because he's got new people watching him. So I want to see those guys come. There's 2 new receivers here, the brand new, fresh, young guys with Paul Billups and Christian Hamilton. So it's going to be fun to watch them on Sunday and watch them run. And then we've got a lot of new secondary faces. So how's it going to be with Elijah Huzzy jumping out there at corner? He played so well. Is that going to work for us? And are we going to be better in the defensive line? We have to be. So we got to make progress there. We need to make it immediately. So I want that to start Sunday and have more urgency up front, and more penetration, and young linebackers. Tommy Thigpen did a great job with his 2 linebackers, but we didn't have any depth, and that made it really, really hard for special teams and him. So we got to get a bigger room there. So I think really there's a whole lot of competition, a lot of guys to look at, and you see a guy like Travion Henderson. Travion Green. You hate the fact that he got hurt because we really needed him. But I saw him, he's out there moving around, and a lot of the guys that are hurt, like Ed Montelis, they're going to be able to work in the spring. They just won't have contact, but they can still do drill work and footwork and learn those schemes. So summer will be important for all the guys that got hurt.
Mack, that linebacker obviously did get to be a thin position. You obviously had the 2 studs up front, but they played a ton of snaps. Like, I know you said you're going to go over the depth chart in full tomorrow, but do you have a sense of who could be running alongside Cedric and Power Echoes? Who are the guys in the mix there to maybe win playing time this spring, do you think?
Well, a real disappointing one was Sebastian Cheeks, because he has a chance to be really good, and he'll be out there. Maybe he can do 7-on-7 and drills, but he's not going to have contact, and that really hurts us. I wish he did. And then you've got the 2 freshmen that are coming in, and then you've got Caleb Lavalley that comes in June. But we can't ask Sid and Power to play every play. I was so afraid as a head coach every game if they get a targeting call or get hurt. We just didn't have much experience behind them. So that we've got to get that fixed. And one of the most important things this spring, we got to get the 2 young running backs to go. We got to find another quarterback, but we've got to get more depth at linebacker.
Mack, to say that.
I'm sorry, and Deuce.
He's in the mix.
Yes, Deuce Caldwell is definitely in the mix, and he will be healthy.
Right, he's not hurt.
I'm sorry, and Hucker Road played as a walk-on last year. But you'll have Deuce and those 2 freshmen, and Hucker Road will get a lot of looks this spring because we'll limit Power and Said some just because they played too much. We didn't substitute in the offensive line as much as I'd like, and we didn't have anybody to substitute at linebacker. Rara played some, but we really just didn't have any depth at all. I would tell Said and Power before every game, you can't get hurt, and you can't have a targeting call. So just understand that.
Great advice.
Now go play your butt off.
Mack, for years, Clemson is an example or an exception in Florida State the first time you're here. But for years, people say everybody in the ACC has good players. Nobody has enough of them. Would you agree with that based on what's a perception of a football league versus an SEC? And how does the depth compare to at Texas when you had it going? The depth when you get somebody injured, you put in a guy who you know is going to be a good substitute. Since
I've been here, Clemson's had as good of players as anybody in the country, and that's why they're in the playoff every year. This was an unusual year for them. Miami has got great players. Florida State's got great players, and both of them are recruiting better. So it would get that way. I would think that the rest of us have a lot of good players, but we've sometimes I talked to the staff about this yesterday. You've got to cross-train to make sure your best 11 are on the field. So if your backup right corner is better than your starting left corner, then you move him over. But if the starting guy's better and he gets hurt, but this right corner is better than the backup left corner, then move him over. Let's don't be so stubborn that we handcuff ourselves by scheme or by depth chart. Let's play the best players.
You look at them that way, guys can play multiple.
Yes, sir. You cross-train everybody that you possibly can, just like DJ Jones. I don't want him going to safety and not being able to play as much as he did at running back because he's being so unselfish. So we're going to keep him in tune enough with running back that if the safety doesn't work, he can still come back and play running back. Anything else? Okay, thank you guys. I think Freddie's coming up. So you'll enjoy